Cree, Dene, and Métis peoples. However, we work extensively throughout Manitoba in the lands of Treaties 1 through 4 and the southern portion of Treaty 5. ARMID respects the treaties that were made on these lands where we work together. We commit to reconciliation along the path to economic prosperity. So today we'd like to just put out a few suggestions about our timeline. We hope you also will put questions in the chat. We're here for at least an hour. I'm trying to keep us on track with that as we get going here. I'd also like to acknowledge our staff. We have Ama Anadozi, the admin coordinator, Fumi Abiola Odutola, our marketing coordinator, manager, and we also have Eric Forrester. He is an economic development advisor on the western side of the province, along with myself, Deanna Fritvenson. I'm on the eastern side of the province. Just want to introduce and recognize our guest today is Travis Parsons. Travis has both a Bachelor of Engineering degree, Agriculture, and a Master's of Applied Science degree from the Technical University of Nova Scotia. He's the General Manager of the Manitoba Water Services Board and heads the Water Services branch within the Department of the Public Service Delivery. The WSB staff provide project management services to implement the Manitoba Water Services Board and water and sewer capital projects on behalf of municipal clients, other departments, and agencies. Travis has been the general manager since 2019 and has 30 years of engineering experience, including 26 with the province of Manitoba in various engineering roles. He has developed working relationships over the years with many municipalities and has an excellent understanding of the water and sewer infrastructure upgrading requirements that municipalities face due to aging infrastructure and economic development opportunities, as well upgrading requirements to meet current provincial and federal regulations. Our title today of the webinar is Insight from Manitoba Water Services. And just a quick follow-up on that is new funding formulas will be starting April 1st, and we're going to talk a little bit about that too. Travis, I'd like to turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to share my screen. There, that should be, people should be able to see that now, hopefully.
Yeah, looks good.
Okay, good. Okay, let me start off by saying that I'm happy to be here and thank you to the Rural Manitoba Economic Development Corporation for hosting this event to give me this opportunity to do this presentation to you today. I'm going to get right into it. So just a brief outline of my presentation today. First, I'm going to describe to you what and who is the Manitoba Water Services Board, discuss the board's mandate and objectives, the different funding programs under the board, what roles and services are provided, and I think a lot of people are probably interested in is how to apply for the technical and the financial assistance. I'll also discuss a little bit with how we enter into agreements with municipalities and water cooperatives, and go through some of the Water Services Board project activities. So I'll start off going through a bit of history. So the Manitoba Water Services Board, its origins started 66 years ago as a water supply board, which was formed in 1959, long before my time. Back then, the board did just water projects, and a lot of that infrastructure that was done probably mostly in the 1960s at that time especially water treatment plants and underground infrastructure, is still in operation today. So I still see the same. There's a very distinct look about the water treatment plants that were done in the 1960s, and you still see them out there today, although inside them everything has been replaced, but the structure is still is the same. In 1972, with the enactment of the Manitoba Water Services Board Act, the board is considered a Crown corporation, and in the act, it allowed us to do both water and sewer projects. So in 1972, we started doing sewer projects as well. The Minister of Municipal Northern Relations is charged with the administration of the Manitoba Water Services Board Act, and the actual board is made up of 5 board of directors, and we host quarterly board meetings. So the board of directors are appointed through an order in council, and that means it goes through, gets approved through cabinet and ultimately by the Governor General. And the 5 board members consist of 3 deputy ministers and 2 members from the Association of Manitoba Municipalities. So the Deputy Minister of Municipal Northern Relations is the chair, and that's Mona Pandy. The chair is always the deputy minister who works for the minister responsible for the act. So Municipal Northern Relations oversees the act, and that's why Mona is our chair. We also have a vice chair, Joseph Dunford, and he's the deputy minister of public service delivery, and Jocelyn Baker, who's the deputy minister of environment and climate change. The 2 AMM members are the executive director, Dennis Volkov, and the vice president, Brad Saluk. And all the Water Services Board activities are managed by the Water Services branch, headed by myself, the general manager. So just wanted to go through the organization here a little bit, because it can be a little confusing, but there's a couple things you need to take away from this. The Manitoba Water Services Board programs and services are delivered by the Water Services branch, and the branch is within Capital Projects Planning and Delivery Division of the Department of Public Service Delivery. So in the province, you have a number of departments, and in each department, there are a number of divisions, and then within each division, there's a number of branches. So the staff who do the work for the board are within Water Services branch, so right here. And I report through Capital Projects Planning and Delivery, and ultimately the Minister, Mintu Sandhu. However, the board itself, made up of the 5 directors, reports actually directly to the Legislative Assembly through the Minister of Municipal Northern Relations, currently Glenn Simard. Then looking at the more detailed organizational chart, so you'll see I just had zoomed in the top area there to describe how it's governed, but I do myself is here, so I have an administrative team, and we have a planning design area that's led by Nathan Whitmire, our chief engineer. We have a finance area led by Cheryl Brigden, the chief financial officer, and we have a construction and operations area led by Angela Meyer, chief of operations. So the finance staff obviously do the financial work for the board and all our projects, but Angela oversees both the construction and maintenance. We also are involved with the operation and maintenance of a number of water treatment systems in Manitoba, and that's this side here, and then these are our construction staff here, and we have about 10 engineers on staff, and a number of and the technical staff, or the rest of them are civil engineering technologists. So there is a lot of crossover work. So a lot of the the engineers that are on the planning design, they do lead construction projects as well. So we are quite integrated in our duties and not necessarily confined to just planning a design and construction and so on. So our office is located in the city of Brandon. And you'll see here, we're in the south end of Brandon on 2010 Curry Boulevard. And that's, it's kind of like a service road right off of 18th Street, which is kind of the major drag through the city, Trans-Canada Highways up here to the north. So the mandate of the Water Services Board, it's to provide technical and financial assistance to municipalities in the development of safe, cost-effective, and sustainable water and wastewater infrastructure for the people of Manitoba. More detailed objectives as defined in the Act. The Water Services Board has the following general objectives. So the obtaining, development, transmission, distribution, and control of water supplies for domestic use and collection, treatment, and disposal of domestic sewage or wastewater. The board's annual budget is $24 million. And that's the same as it was in our fiscal year 24-25. So in 25-26, we have $24 million. And I should say that our fiscal runs from April 1st to March 31st of each year. And since we have a cost share program, that allows us to do about $50 million in water and sewer infrastructure annually. We have the two main funding programs. So we have a municipal water and sewer program and a rural water development program. And these funding formulas actually came into effect April 1st of 2024. A lot of municipalities started taking advantage of increased funding. So under the municipal water and sewer program, those projects are eligible for 50% funding. That's typically the structures, underground piping, such as for water main and sewer renewals in communities and towns, cities. And with the changes prior to that, the water main and sewer renewals extensions used to be only eligible for 30%. So starting April 1st of last year, we were able to increase that now to 50% funding. And a big change for our rural water development program is that's all the rural water pipelines that we deliver rural water from a centralized water treatment plant out into the country to rural residences and agricultural farms and so on. That program used to be just 1/3 funding from the Water Services Board, but long ago, we used to get an additional 1/3 of federal funding through PFRA. And since they haven't been in existence since the late 2000s, we've only been able to offer 1/3 funding, which was really cost prohibitive for doing rural water pipelines. And so last year we were able to increase that funding up to 2/3 funding for rural water pipelines. And then because of additional costs due in the north, any projects north of the 53rd parallel are eligible for an additional 10% funding. Should also mention that in some instances, the Water Services Board budget provides the provincial share for some of the federal provincial funding programs. So currently, there's Investing in Canada Infrastructure program projects underway. Some of those projects, that's the provincial share is actually coming from the board's $24 million capital grants. But we also do a lot of project management for those federal provincial programs where there is no Water Services Board funding involved. And that's mainly due to, smaller municipalities and villages and towns and so on really don't have the technical and the financial capacity to take on those. So they often reach out to us to help manage their projects on their behalf. So in considering all the different programs, and we deliver more than $100 million in infrastructure projects annually. Our clients are all the cities, towns, villages, rural municipalities, and the registered water co-ops in the province. The Act does exclude the City of Winnipeg and anything on federal land, such as federal parks or First Nations. And when for Water Services Board funded projects, we do provide the full project management services on behalf of the client, and I'll get into that a little bit later in my presentation. And as I mentioned before, if requested, we can provide project management services for other funding programs, such as the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, ICIP, and I'm anticipating that municipalities will be reaching out for any projects under the Canada Housing Infrastructure Fund. There's the two delivery streams. The direct delivery stream under SHIF is still accepting applications, I think, until the end of March. And I anticipate that there'll be a number of projects, water and sewer projects awarded under that. And then there'll also be the provincial territorial stream projects as well that will eventually get funded.
Travis, I just was thinking I have a poll to share out with everybody if they wanted to share what municipality they're from and if they're interested in putting a project forward, or let us know if you've put a project forward. Amma, could you share the first poll out, please? And this is just for interest's sake. We're just wondering who's already participated or applied for funding, and if they need more support in getting their application going or still considering it.
Yeah, we've received over 100 applications so far and I'm going to get into that later in the presentation. So for Water Services Board funded projects, we have a call out right now to municipalities submit their projects. So it'd be interesting to see how many have already submitted projects and who are still anticipating to submit a project before the end of the month, which is the deadline.
Yeah, time is flying.
So project management services. So we do provide what I described as full project management services. So we provide and conduct engineering studies, pre-design, design, and do the tendering as well. A lot of the pre-design is required to develop those regional servicing concepts, undertake those feasibility studies, pre-design reports, and apply and get environmental approvals or an Environment Act license through the province. That pre-design and design services for municipalities, it allows them to have tender-ready projects that they can then utilize for either applying for Water Services Board funding or other funding opportunities. So you can have the cost estimates and the details of the project already to apply for any of those funding opportunities that may arise. Now we do hire most of our work. We procure the consulting engineers to provide a lot of the engineering services for many of our projects. We do have, like I mentioned, in-house engineers, and a lot of our specialty is doing the rural water pipelines under the Rural Water Development Program, And we also do some of the smaller structures and, maybe some upgrades to pump houses, booster stations, those things. We typically do that with our in-house engineers. We can provide the tendering services, and we also administer construction contracts during construction. And while we ensure that all the regulatory requirements are met under the Drinking Water Safety Act, the Environment Act, Water Rights Act, ensuring that permits, licenses are obtained. There's typically approvals that are required for highway crossings, utility crossings, creek crossings, and so on. So ensure that's all taken care of, and also any requirements under the Water Rights Act, such as Water Rights Act license, or that also deals with wetlands as well. Just want to describe our tendering site here a little bit. So this should take you, if I click on this, we'll take you to our tendering platform. So we actually have two websites. This website here is where contractors and so on go to look up our bid opportunities. So we use a bids and tenders tendering platform. We also advertise on Mercs, but that basically refers projects to go to the bids and tenders site to get the tenders. So we have a number of chemical tenders out now for submissions, but that's where contractors and suppliers can download the documents and so on. So we do all our tendering electronically. Go back. We also have the board's standard construction specifications on this site. You can see a lot of it has to deal with the typical work that we do with pipelines, concrete works, and so on. So there's a number of specifications that can be downloaded, and then we also just kind of show what projects are up and coming project tenders. So some of these have not been tendered yet. A lot of them have been tendered, so that will get renewed once we enter into our new fiscal here shortly. Get out of here, back to the site. Great. So back to project management services. So during construction, we do enter into a contract between the Water Services Board and the general contractor. Our staff attend all the construction meetings, ensure that there's inspection services going on. If we're the designer, we have inspectors that do the inspection services. We're working with consultants. Typically, it's the consultant that's doing the inspection services. We ensure all the contract specifications are being met. We issue all the contract change orders, control the budget, and help municipalities, especially when there's construction and warranty issues to deal with. And we process all the progress payments. We pay 100% of the costs up front. So probably a lot of people are interested in how to apply for funding assistance. So as many of you know, we submit we develop a 5-year capital plan to initiate and schedule new projects. So annually, we send out, we've been doing this through email, and send out an email to all the municipalities and registered water co-ops, a project request form to identify new water and sewer projects that your municipality or co-op might be considering to do in the next 2 to 5 years. So it's 2 to 5 years because projects that say you're applying for this year will be considered for capital plan, which will get submitted to the province later in the year. And usually I don't get approval on that capital plan until January, February the following year. So I did get approval on our current capital plan for 25 26, it's just because of the by-election that's going on, there's a blackout and I can't notify municipalities yet if you've received funding or not. So you have to be patient on that. So staff, when we receive all those applications, staff evaluate and prioritize those projects using an approved rating criteria. And then we develop a capital plan, and it goes initially to the Water Services Board members for their approval, and then ultimately it goes to the province for the approval. And it's about a 1-year process. So we typically do our call out end of January, and then about a year later, hopefully I have approval on the capital plan. So the board does have a policy directive on how to establish what projects are considered priority. And the direction we were given has to be in alignment with Manitoba's water management strategy. So that's how the project priority was developed. So projects that protect public health and or the environment, those projects that deal with non-compliant issues under the regulations and regional-based wastewater systems, those 3 categories there, they receive the highest priority. And we do evaluate based on a point system. Projects that are still or categories that are also considered a priority, but to a lesser extent are those ones that enhance climate resiliency, supports economic development, those projects that offer water conservation or water use efficiencies, projects that embrace innovative technologies and approaches, and projects that involve engagement, either with or both with Indigenous or stakeholder engagement. So a lot of times municipalities apply for funding. They don't necessarily check off stakeholder engagement, but if you're going through a borrowing, if you're looking at borrowing, you will be engaging with stakeholders. So just be aware of that when you're filling out the application. So getting into the more details of the application, I'm going to bring this up a little larger and zoom in. So this is instructions that we send out on how to apply for technical and funding assistance. So it does there is a reference for the government's website. So if I click there, this will take you to the website under the Department of Municipal and Northern Relations. And there's more information here on the mandate, the activities of the board. There is the information on the municipal water and sewer program. So if you go to this website, there's a fact sheet you can open up on the water and sewer program. And also there's one for the rural water development program. So there's more information in addition to this presentation that you can go to. There's actually a link for the Act if you want to look that up. And there's information on our annual reports that get submitted to the Legislative Assembly each year, and I'll pull those up a little bit later. And there's another link here to our standard construction specifications. Okay, about feasibility studies. So I do get a lot of municipalities that say they want to do a feasibility study in the project applications, but note if you think that feasibility study is under $100,000, you don't have to submit a project request form. All I need is a resolution from council, and I will take that proposed study to the board of directors for potential funding under. We have a study budget that we can use. But for capital projects, I actually have to have provincial authority for individual capital projects. So when you're submitting your project request form, you don't need to submit a resolution at the time of the application. Another note is we don't carry over requests from previous years. So municipalities' priorities change from year to year. So I'd like to see if it was a priority last year, and if it's still a priority this year, you need to again submit a new project request form each year that is still a priority. All the applications we're now using, instead of the old used to use a fillable PDF form, which didn't work very well. So now we're using a Microsoft Forms platform for filling out the application. I'm hearing from municipalities they like it much better. And the application deadline is needs to be submitted by March 31st, so 2025. And you can send any supporting documents, like if you've have feasibility studies or cost estimates, you can send them in a separate email to Amy Lamb, who's my administrative officer. Close that down. And now the actual application form, briefly go through that. So this is on Microsoft Forms. It's much nicer. It's simple. You just click the box or circle for if you're a municipality or a city or a town. The name. So if it's a rural municipality, you don't have to write in rural municipality of, because these all get compiled into a large spreadsheet eventually. So it's nice to be able to sort them alphabetically just by the, instead of city brand, and just put brand in there, because you would have checked off city up above. If you didn't do that and you've already submitted, no worries, we can make those changes. And then identify what AMM district you're in. You should probably, I'm assuming they know, but if you don't know, or if you're unsure, under the AMM website, you can look that up. Again, or not again, but please identify if this is which the priority, rank them out of priority. So understand they may all be high priority, but I'd like to see which is your first priority, then your second priority, third priority, and so on. So each project application should have a different project priority. Doesn't mean you're only going to get funding for the highest priority one, but it's nice to see what's your priority. And then check off if it's just a water project, potable water project, or just a wastewater project, or the water and wastewater are typically those water main and sewer renewals. So if it encompasses both, you can check off the water and wastewater box there. What project type it is. Oh, I forgot to mention under the project request form. So I wonder if I can go back there. Just close this briefly. For those project types, there are definitions in here to help municipalities know what they're checking off on the application form. So you'll see, raw water supply pipeline. That means, construction of new wells, the pumps, electrical, the raw water pipeline, and so on. So it just gives you some guidance on what box to check off. I'll go back to here. So yeah, so that's where we're at. So if it's a water treatment plant or a reservoir, what have you, just wastewater treatment, and so on. Or if it doesn't fit in these categories, you can click the other box and fill it in there. Just identify the name of the project. It could be a Minto water treatment plant upgrade or something like that. Did you previously submit this project in last year? If you know, then let me know, and I know that it was a priority last year or the previous year, and it's still a priority project. And when you want start the project. So 2026, if you're submitting an application now, the earliest we can do work on the project would be 2026. Or if you're not looking at doing it until a later year, identify that. Then provide a good project description. So what's the scope of work? Is it construction of a new reservoir, building, pumps? You can describe it all in as best you can in this field here. And this is how we use to help prioritize the project. So this is the same list you saw before. So you can check off multiple boxes if you like. And so say if you check off all these boxes, then down in this character field here, then I want to see you explain how you think it protects public health and the environment. How does it offer water conservation or water use efficiency? So that helps me evaluate the projects and so on. Was there any previous engineering studies, pre-design, cost estimates completed? You can check that off. Was there Environment Act proposal submitted or Environment Act license received? You can check yes or no. Any engineer detailed design completed, or if design is in progress, check that off. And then the field here is the estimated project cost. So you can enter in, for example, $1 million. Just an example. Where did the cost estimate come from? Was it the Water Services Board that helped you with the cost estimate? It's a consultant, a contractor, or was it maybe your Public Works, the applicant that came up with the cost estimate or other? How are you going to finance the project? Are you looking at a combination of borrowing and using reserve funds? Has the municipality developed an asset management plan? So we added this in, the board asked me to add this into the application form. It doesn't decide or if you do or don't, it has no outcome on whether your project is approved. It's just for information purposes only. If you have an asset management plan, and then details on the contact. So who's applying, what's your position, email address, phone number, and so on. And then you can click submit and you're done. And then you can, that's for the first application, and then you can fill out multiple ones. So hopefully that was clear enough. Just covering the cost sharing agreement. So once a project has been approved for funding by the board and the province, we'll contact the municipality or co-op, and we'll need a resolution at council at that time. And what will happen, we'll enter into a cost sharing agreement with the municipality or co-op. That cost sharing agreement indicates that we'll manage the project, and I stress in partnership with the municipality and co-op. So it's a partnership that we form. Oops, sorry. And we also process all the progress payments. So we pay 100% of the costs of the engineering consultant, the contractors, and so on. And for board funding, what we do is we invoice the municipality, usually at the end of each calendar year if it's a multiple year project, and then again once the project is complete, and that's just for the municipality share, the non-grant portion. If we're doing an ICIP project, it's a little different. Municipalities will often want to be invoiced a little more frequently because once they've incurred costs by paying the board for the cost, then they can apply to have the federal share and provincial share reimbursed, and it helps provide the bridge financing while we're working through the project. As I mentioned, prior feasibility studies can be sought throughout the year just by submitting a resolution to council. But if it's a large feasibility study, it's going to be more than $100,000. I only have so much budget that I can use for feasibility studies for the year for the whole province. So I don't want it to be eaten up by one or two projects. If it's a large feasibility study, then submit a project application or a project submit a project request form. And then I'll present it to the board at one of the quarterly board meetings, and those studies are eligible for 50% assistance. The signing process. So when COVID hit, we went to an electronic signing platform. Prior to that, we used to develop 3 hard copies of an agreement, courier to the municipality. They would have to sign all 3 copies, send them back to our office here. Then we would forward it then off to the chairman at the Ledge building. They would sign it, send them back to us, and then we would then keep our copies and send the copy to the municipality. And that took a long time. And during COVID, stuff was getting lost on because nobody was working out of the office. So it was things were getting lost. So now we use this electronic signing platform, and it's called Signature Master, and it is you'll get an email typically to the CAO and the city manager, or it would be a reeve or a mayor, and you're invited to sign and seal a cost-sharing agreement. The Signature Master hosts a secure electronic signing platform for both the municipality and the Water Services Board or the chair's signature. Municipalities will need to register their seal, and both staff, usually, again, that city manager or CAO, or reeve or mayor, register those signatures. And there is a fee for that, but Water Services Board covers those fees. It's part of our operating costs. And then once the chair signs that agreement, and the municipality has its local funding share in place, the agreement will be considered executed and available for downloading. So we can speed up in a matter of a few days now. We can get our agreement signed, which is much quicker than what it used to be. I mentioned that the municipality has to have its funding share. So if the municipality has like reserve funding and cash on hand to do the municipal share, then we can execute and that agreement right away. But if you're doing borrowing and you have to go through that borrowing process, even though you sign the agreement, we won't release it until all the funding is in place, because we can't tender a project until all funding is in place. Some of their other activities, we provide project management services for environment and climate change's Parks branch, and all the water and sewer projects for Northern Affairs branch. So those are those under Municipal Northern Relations. And so those are those northern communities. We also provide, as I mentioned a couple of times already, project management services for those federal provincial programs. And there's also some special funding initiatives that happen from time to time. In 2023, the province provided an additional $100 million in funding for water and sewer projects, and we ended up having to manage most of those projects. So 100 million in provincial funding meant, a couple $100 million in total project costs. So it's going to take us a number of years to fully get those projects done. There was $50 million back in 2020 that was advanced, wasn't advanced, but it was available for doing water and sewer projects under the Manitoba Restart program. And we finally have finished all those projects. We also operate 6 regional water co-ops. and 4 municipal systems. And that means we oversee the treatment and operations and any of the major upgrades, and we administer all the expenditures, and we conduct an annual water rate study, and we set the wholesale water rate for those particular facilities that we operate. And getting close to the end of the presentation here, so I just wanted to mention there's more information that you can go and look up. So there's an annual report which we produce. Usually gets tabled at the Legislative Assembly in September, and then it's uploaded on the website and available for the public or whoever to see it. And I'm going to click on it and just quickly go through that. You'll see you can go back a number of years, annual reports. There's a number of electronic ones. Looks like it goes back to 2003, 2004. But a report that was published in September last year was on our 23-24 fiscal year. And this is what the annual report looks like. I'll just scroll through it here relatively quickly, but there's the minister, letter from the minister, our deputy minister, or chair of the board at the time was Bruce Gray. Table of contents. These are the board members of the time. Here's Joseph Dunford and Dennis are the only two people that are still on the board. You probably recognize Cam Blight. Brad Saluk has now replaced Cam Blight. Cam was the president, but Brad is now acting or a board member as the vice president. And we have Mona Pandy now here, replaced Bruce Gray, and we have a new deputy minister for environment and climate change as well. Background information on the board. More information on objectives, capital programs. I usually do a message. Last year, my message was, building those municipal partnerships. Even though it's a formal agreement, we're building a partnership when we do projects. And then I usually go through some of the statistics that were accomplished throughout the year. These are all the water facilities that we used to actually own and operate. It goes back to the 70s, but have now been transferred back to the municipalities. These are the ones that we don't own any infrastructure anymore, but we still provide the operations. There's 4 municipal systems and the 6 water co-ops that I mentioned. Keep strolling through here. Some major projects that we did. And there's a list so you can go and see, these are the projects that we substantially completed in 23-24. You'll see the types of projects that we did. So we substantially completed just under $50 million worth of work last year. These are the projects that were under design or in construction in 23-24. And there's several pages of these. And you'll see we had $211 million worth of works underway last fiscal. And then there's another list of water and sewer, the agreements that we signed with municipalities last year. So we entered into cost sharing agreements with municipalities for about $81 million. And these are some of the departmental projects we did. We're working on about $15 million for parks branch, and another $15 million, $14 million with Northern Affairs communities. And some of the ICIP projects that we're working on as well. Some of those special initiative projects, there's about 120 there, 120 million. I'm going to skip just right down because my time is pretty well up, and just say at the end of there's our audit is in here, but at the end there's some pictures you'll see of the projects that we undertook. So we did some pictures from upgrades we did at the town of Neepawa last year, northern community of Bissett, northern community of Woboden, water treatment plant upgrades for the town of Morris. We helped build a new water treatment plant for the town of Beausejour. Did an expansion of St. Andrews Petersfield Truckall wastewater treatment lagoon. Involved a synthetic liner, that project. We worked in provincial parks. This is Northern Park at Paint Lake Provincial Park. Looks like a lagoon project. Arberg, Broken Head, and Stanley Corridor Reservoir. We built a new reservoir in Arms Stanley in the corridor area. So that is the end of my presentation. So I guess we have about 10 minutes.
That was a lot of information. Thanks, Travis. I just wanted to ask, reach out to the group. Any questions? If you want to just unmute yourselves and share up a question, we'd be happy to have Travis take on that question.
Okay, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, is it cheaper to dig in the ground to put a line in, or is it cheaper to push a line through?
It depends on the circumstances. So in most cases, we leave it up to the contractor how they want to install it, but there's some areas that have to be directionally drilled. So there's open cut where they're using excavators. They can plow pipeline in. They can trench pipelines in as well. But there's also directionally drilling. So if we're dealing, in areas where there's in communities where if we're out in the country, not an issue. Unless we're crossing a water course, then we need to directionally drill under a water course. But if we're dealing with in towns, we don't want to be cutting open parking lots or destroying sidewalks and roads. So it really depends on the circumstance. A lot of times, the service lines to homes will be pushed, and that might be a preference from the municipality to do that. But if we generally leave it up to the contractor how they want to do it, we usually get the best price that way. But it kind of depends on the circumstances. If we're out in the country, it's going to be more economical just to excavate. In a city or a town, it's going to be the restoration cost. Considering the restoration costs, it's probably going to be more economical to push pipes.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know what the process is about raising hands here, but Travis, hi, Steve Packing. Just a quick question. If now that you can't let us know till after the by-election as to what projects have been approved that were requested last year, should we resubmit those just in case?
Yeah, I'd recommend resubmitting them. It shows still a high priority too. And also that list of projects that we develop, it is of great interest to the government to show, like, last year we had 311 applications, and there were a lot of big projects, or not a lot, but there was a number of really large projects, and it was $1.6 billion in total project costs that were requested last year. So that kind of is an eye opener for the government to say there's a huge infrastructure deficit, and it helps support ensuring that they support the Water Services Board with grant funding and the federal and provincial programs. So yeah, please resubmit them if you know you haven't received the funding.
Thank you.
Just a question, Travis. I'm sorry, my cameras are set up really weird. I'm now looking at a blank screen and you're up here. So if my eyes flick, it's
No
not
problem.
I've got sympathitis dance or whatever. Just a question on lagoon sludge removal. We've got the problem of a lagoon expansion in our RM.
Yep.
And originally that lagoon was designed, we were told, for inhabitants of 3,000 residents. Now, all of a sudden, with 500 ratepayers using it, it's suddenly obviously lacking in size. We've been told to expand. And yet we hear around there is some movement now with looking at sludge removal and sludge treatment that might mitigate that. And that would save this RM a considerable amount of money if there was some rethought on that movement. Have you got anything in the pipeline that you could give us a hint on whether that's now going to be looked at as acceptable?
Yeah, we've helped fund a lot of lagoon projects, like the upgrades and so on, and there's been a requirement to remove the sludge or the biosolids. And the preferred method for the province, you need to get an Environment Act license, and they like to see that applied on agricultural land as a resource than as a waste that gets landfilled. Another option is to dewater it. You can either develop a dewatering system. A lot of times they'll use geobags to help dewater, and then you're left with the more solid material, which then could be hauled to the landfill and used as help use as a cap on the landfill. But we do provide funding assistance for that. Typically, it's during the upgrade, because that's typically when you're upgrading, that's the opportune time to especially you have to reconstruct a cell or put a liner in it, right? You need to get, or put an aeration system, you need to get rid of that sludge first. But if it's just a desludging project because of capacity, we can consider that as well for funding.
Well, that's the question. Does the
Yeah.
desludging then remove that need for the expansion? Because
it may, yes, yeah.
Yeah, because that for us, for a like every rural RM, budgets are tight, debentures are high, and for this area, as you know, where we're going through water main improvements as it is, another great big hit is it's a huge burden for taxpayers, and if this sludge removal is a cheaper option, we would certainly welcome the chance to try it, and that's what basically we're looking for, is if there is an inkling of hope for us to do that rather than spend 6 million on a new lagoon.
Right, yeah, it definitely will give you, it all depends on the lagoon design, right? So regarding hydraulic capacity, it will help. Typically the sludge buildup is mostly in the primary cell. That's not where you have most of your hydraulic capacity. Most of the hydraulic capacity is in the secondary cell, because you can use 100% of that storage is used for hydraulic capacity, but only the primary cell, the environment only considers 50% of that volume as part of the capacity. So, but also the primary cell, the size of that primary cell also dictates how much organic solids you can handle. So it's based on surface area, not necessarily the solids buildup. But the other thing to consider, we haven't been cost sharing on chemical too, because there's been a lot of different suppliers that claim they can help reduce the sludge and biosolids in a lagoon by spreading chemical. We haven't seen independent proof of that yet. Often some of these suppliers, you can go to their website and they have some testimonials or claims on there, but it's not really done by an independent third party. So it would be interesting if we were working on a project, if there was an opportunity to have a third party do that assessment, on the ability of chemical addition, because we're spending government funding, and sometimes those chemical can be quite expensive, and we're not sure if it's actually you're getting the results or the bang for your buck out of it.
Travis, sorry to interrupt, but we do have a couple other questions I want to get through here. Jolene Bird, how quickly after the by-election will the RM be notified if they have been approved for the 25-26 projects? And I think we kind of answered that. Travis, anything more to add?
Yeah, actually, when I got the approval, on the capital plan, there was a stipulation that I was to work with communications to develop a news release. So we developed a news release, but it didn't get posted on the government website before the election. So now I've been held up. That's been held up. So hopefully shortly after the 18th, I can let people know. And I can't wait any longer. Like, if I have been working with communications, so I after the 18th, you can expect if we're ready to move, you can either contact me, email or phone call, or we'll be reaching out to those who were successful, because we want to get going on a lot of these projects. So
Yeah.
remember, it is a 5-year capital plan. So just because it was approved doesn't mean we can do your project right away. It all depends on cash flows and availability of budget.
Perfect. Travis, could I ask you to close your presentation, and we'll open up
Sorry.
the group a little more? Thank you for that. My next question is from Clay Gibson. Oh, where did we go? Closed my screen as well. Sorry about that. Clay asks, what would some of the most innovative water or wastewater projects that you've seen in the past couple of years, what would they be, or what would they look like?
Yeah. Often, like today, like innovation sometimes is utilizing with water treatment in particular. We did a biological filter in the arm of Taché. That was the first for Manitoba. That's been done in a number of or more in Saskatchewan and Alberta. So that was a successful project. That was a few years ago. There was also some phosphorus removal technology that we've provided funding assistance with. So we just did, it was with Dillon Consulting. I can't even think of the name of it, but that was quite a while ago, but we haven't done too many of those projects. Now with lagoons, we're getting into a lot more, instead of expanding by building another cell, we're doing a lot of Sager systems or MBBR systems. So we don't need to increase the footprint very much, but we're using mechanical technology in a lagoon setting. So that's being innovative, and we can do then continuous discharge year round.
Is that passive filtration system something that is used a bit or not as frequently? I know the village of Donater had.
Yeah, that's the one I'm thinking of.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, we helped do that project. That was a number of years ago.
Great.
And yeah, and there's other technologies out there as well. Typically, if it's a new technology that hasn't been proven, especially in a northern climate, the municipalities will help run pilot projects to see if it works or not. We did that with the town of Neepawa with an MBBR technology. We ran a trailer all winter long, and then that project was constructed.
Wow. One more question here. We have a lagoon project in the works waiting on an ISP currently. If this has been requested as a funded project, does Manitoba Water Services Board cover costs already paid? If the project is approved, it's added.
What's the ISP? Sorry.
I'm not sure. Waiting on an ISP. It's just a question with assistant CAO on it. If that person wants to unmute and add.
Typically,
any further thoughts?
Yeah, it depends. We can consider if we're working on a project and we enter into an agreement with an ongoing, study or so on, we can help out with the cost of that
Industrial
study.
service agreement.
Oh, industrial service agreement, right? Yeah. So that's just an agreement with an industry or commercial or whatever to do to accept wastewater. But if it's a major capital project, you know, it's more along the lines, I think, with the studies and designs that we might be able to help out if it's, you know, already started. But typically, no, if it's a construction project that started and was completed, then we don't, cost share on something that was done prior to getting the approval.
Travis, something commonly asked to myself is, how do I find out the capacity of water and capacity of my wastewater system? Where do I start?
Resolution of council submitted to myself, and we can hire a
Find that answer.
consultant and do a study. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Any more questions? I guess we should be mindful of time. It's 11:06. And Travis, thank you so much for your time today. And it was absolutely fabulous presentation. And I'm hoping that everyone is got a lot of questions, more questions and takeaways for you.
No, thanks again for hosting this, and thanks for everybody listening and the great questions.
And we have one more poll that Amma would I'd like her to share out, just on what your thoughts were on our presentation today. And if there's any more questions, we're happy to take them while we have Travis on the line.
Well, if you don't mind, Travis, I do have one additional question, if I may.
Sure.
So for different projects that are happening throughout the province, is there an opportunity through the Manitoba Water Services Board or any way to get contact information for different projects to bundle together to apply under the Canada Infrastructure Bank?
Yeah, we municipalities can either contact myself or send an email if they're looking at Canada Infrastructure Bank project. It's actually under the public service delivery. There's a section called SIAD, or Strategic Initiatives and Alternative Delivery, and it's led by Sean Adams, and they're looking. He helped facilitate the SIB project for the RSR wastewater treatment plant in the city of Brandon water treatment plant. So I can either forward the contact information on, but they did examine all the projects that did come in last year and the number of large projects that were submitted. And, you know, the government did say, well, how might we help develop these projects? So they looked at a bunch of scenarios of how maybe they could be bundled. So that has been looked at by the government. So, but if you reach out to me, I can see if I can't share some of that information or if it's still just internal to government.
Great question, Eric. And also, if municipalities are considering that, if they would even share that with ARMID, and we could work towards something like that. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, I have one question, if I could, really quick.
Sure, go ahead.
Our town water plant now needs $6 million in upgrades. And from the RM's point of view, we were really excited about pushing these water lines. Do you know how long this is going to set us back?
I'm sorry, I don't. So you're looking at a water treatment plant upgrade and also doing a pipeline project as well?
Yes.
Which municipality?
Lactabani.
Oh, Lactabani. RM or town?
The water plant is in town.
Yeah.
But the RM wants to push the water lines.
Right. Okay. So yeah. So we're looking at providing. I saw the results of the water treatment plant. So you're going to have to. I don't have capital dollars approved for that, so that you're going to have to submit a project request forms for those upgrades. I do know that the water plant, there's a number of upgrades that are needed, but the plant does have capacity, so we can talk about that offline. But we were hoping that if we're able to do both projects at the same time, but yeah, I see what the challenge there, because you're looking at doing a rural water pipeline project connecting up, but the plant also needs funding as well to do the plant upgrades. So we're hoping that we can work with both the town and the RM and make that happen.
Super. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Great. Any more questions? Probably a million. Going once, going twice. Thank you.